when our technology will start to work with us, not against us? Okay. Tak já bych tady přivítala pana Bokra.
And now I would like to welcome Pavel Bokr to the stage. You might have encountered already yesterday when visiting the Konyaprusy caves, and he's going to inform us about the geoscience education and excursion. Hello, I'm Pavel Bokr. I've come here from the Bohemian Karst Museum in Beroun. I'm also teaching at an elementary school, which is the reason why I'm a bit late. I'm going to inform you about geoscience education, both at our museum and in the Berendian area. The introductory picture looks as follows. That's the area or the site I'm working at. There's a geopark from the Berendian area. So we either educate directly in the, well, small geopark or in the big one where we are taking walks around. I'm focusing on Berendian rocks, which are assembled as follows. And I'm not quite into the denominations yet. I'm focusing on what the rocks can tell us, what we can interpret. And I'm predominantly teaching the children how they can find out something about history thanks to the rocks. So I'm going to try to inform you how we do so. I've already shown you some practical examples yesterday, but what's especially important for us are these petrified animals, which are proof that there's been a sea in here some long time ago. And the petrified objects can actually tell us how old a particular rock is. Finding a trilobite rock means that it's a rock from the ground of a sea, and then the children can even deduce, or we can deduce, the age. We can also use the rocks to find out how the landscape looked like. It's enough to inform the children, for example, about some refined sediment far away from the shore, or like this. If you're coming close to a river basin. We also have these illustrative examples, and I'm actually saying, well, children, but these were in turn university students. They are actually trying things out in the Geopark site at our place. They are classifying the exponates, and I'm demanding that the particular students show to which area or age a sample belongs to. Furthermore, we are searching both in our small geopark and outside for petrified proofs of oxygenization. Some of them might be a so-called ancient proof that there's been some sediment or food. Furthermore, these waves prove that there's been some stream. These slate structures indicate that there's been a shortage of oxygen. We furthermore have these bubble-like stones, which are a proof of ice, and we have these reef structures, which is in turn the indicator of a shallow tropical sea. So I'm rather interested into what the stones can tell us, whereas lava, that's quite frequent in here, can tell us how the landscape looked like. There's been some sea volcanoes, both land volcanoes and sea volcanoes. And when I started working at the museum, the first program was called the Prehistoric Detective. The children, or rather children and students, started finding something out about a time long ago. I'm each time selecting somebody who then tries to read something out of a particular stone or rock. I have this geological development map or overview. Each part is focusing on a particular sample, and I'm handing individual papers out to the students. We are going through individual samples, and the students or children then assort the knowledge or information they found out: a river, a sea, terrestrial volcanoes, sea volcanoes. They keep on assorting this, and thus they are putting together the geological past of the Varangian area. Furthermore, each belt-like structure can then be colored. The students can color them themselves. Now, how does it look like? It's like this. I'm always saying children, but, well, it looks like this if they put it together. I'm not so much interested into how the rocks are called, as I said, but into what we can read out of them. Well, we can also find out how seas originated and how the Varangian area was moved from the southern hemisphere up to the place where it is located now. Furthermore, I've said that I'm a teacher. Since I've been teacher, I've been designing teaching materials. The same type can be found over there on the table. You can take a close look at them, and when teaching, I'm not so much into names, but rather into finding out how a particular rock originated, be it of volcanic origin or another. I've thus designed these overviews to help the students to actually classify the. I'm, as I said, interested into reading out information out of the rocks. It's what I'm using the Geopark to serve. So sandstone or sand and gravel or grittle next to the shore where flood and tide can be observed. Now, there's been a fossil found just behind our school, and I've shown the students an animation of the Paleontological era, and they were to follow the Czech Republic area. The nowadays borders were highlighted there, so it was an easy thing to then tell them that a very long time ago there's been first sea, then land in today's territory of the Czech Republic, and the climate change. The foundation is that it's all about tectonic plates, and I'm using these charts. First, they do not actually see everything, but they're just coloring these streams. Then we portray this on this overview where they apply this to the Earth as such, and then they write down or highlight these arrows on the lithosphere, we find out that seas are being created and vanish again. So that's the way how students actually get to learn it more easily than if I just, informed them about. I'm deploying the same principles when going on excursions or on the walks, and I'd now like to inform you more about these. We are going on these excursions. They are of different nature. Now, we intend the students to get to learn something about the outcrops or exposures. They are to photo document this and to present what they find out or observe. They are to graphically interpret what they detect. The most interesting thing for the participants is finding their own fossils. So we are going to the fossil sites. And furthermore, and this was especially interesting yesterday when we went to the Konyaspruske caves. The Burundian area hosts the Konyaspruske caves, and I've designed a very special walk around these. At first, you see this empty picture, and bit by bit or step by step, people keep telling me information, what they see, what they detect. Finally, they detect these stalagmites and stalactites, but formerly they might not have been aware of sediments and remnants of bones of animals. I do want the students to get aware of the importance of the caves. Now, this might be interesting even for yesterday's participants or walkers from the Konyaspruske jaskini. That's the idea of how a cave looks like, actually. Stalagmites, stalactites, but the same group starts quite properly painting these remnants like bones, and a scientist uncovering them, which serves to find out which organisms had been living here a long time ago. Furthermore, there's an interesting walk as well in the Beronka Valley. I let the participants assemble proofs of the fact that there's been a sea in the same area a long time ago and that it vanished due to the clash of tectonic plates. Furthermore, there are petrified objects, and I let them sort of reconstruct certain facts. Sometimes they just make up something, and if they make up something and I find out, they have to erase this particular part of what they've painted. And there are also virtual excursions or virtual field excursions, as I'm quite fond of new latest technologies, and the participants can try out geomapping using satellite images, and I let them map the salt layers in the Zagros mountain area, and these are located, as you can see it in here. The participants are sitting on a chair somewhere in Beron, and they are mapping where salt can be found somewhere in Iran. Furthermore, the satellite images, and that's important to stress, are not only helpful for these mapping purposes, but they can also help you in finding out and doing a lot about the environment. Additionally, another excursion participants can go to is taking place in Minecraft, a PC game. This rather pixeled Geo game. I've designed it rather more or closer to nature than the original one is. In Minecraft, there are, or rather in this version, there are, for example, even layers of different materials. Minecraft players are sort of used that whenever you dig, you find, for example, iron ores or something else. But I do want to teach the participants that you cannot manage without a geologist. You have to actually know where to dig, what it means to be a geologist, and it's quite tough for a player if they find out that the Minecraft is not actually a real life thing, and we can then finally sort of deduce how to proceed when you are a real geologist. Sometimes I combine this with geography. They can sort of note down some azimuths, and we also work with prospects or with finding gold in river basins. To sum up, we are trying to read out information from the rocks, from the about the past, and I'm, as I said, interested in deploying interesting places outside. And when the weather is really bad, we can go on virtual excursions such as Minecraft or a real life technology like satellite images. Some pictures to conclude this presentation. The activities take place both in the museum and outside, and also at different schools where we have these geology stands. We furthermore go to certain events at schools or elsewhere. Furthermore, it's all about reading out this information from the Berendian rocks. Now I would like to thank you for your attention, and well, are there any questions? There's one question over there. I'll hand the mic back to you, and let's pass that one to the questioner. Is there a difference between the different age groups attending the courses regarding their willingness to, well, play with you? I was sort of naive, as this is taking place at the 9th grade. Usually that the 9th graders would usually get to my place, but normally they do not like going to museums. Rather, these are pupils from the 1st to 4th grade at the Czech elementary schools, which are yet fond of playing. Those from the 5th to 8th or 10th grade are, well, not so much interested. Some of them are. Nevertheless, we also pursue creative activities. They keep on painting or coloring. Some are into this, some reject an activity like painting. Those on the in the 1st to 4th grade are into this creativeness. The older ones, not so much. Did this answer your question? Yes. So, are there any more questions? And if not, thanks, Pavel, for your presentation. I'd just like to repeat that this presentation was sort of an add up to yesterday's excursion. I'm now trying to link Mr. Porosh, and it seems, or rather, while waiting for him, I'd like to ask you, oh, there he is. Let's terminate the conference as such. Let's start with the discussion or Q&A session. And please, prior to going out, please give back the interpreting devices so that we can reload them.
Okay, and try. Give me a moment.
Oh, well.
Please.
Ja, moet je dat doen.
Okay, I have little technical problem with sharing my presentation. Give me a moment, please. Okay, so if you can, I think it could be better idea because I can't share the presentation. I don't know why. Yes, yes, I see. Okay. I hope you see also this presentation. Okay. So I suppose start the presentation. Yes. Okay. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to this event. My name is Michał Poros, and I am the chairman of the board of Holy Cross Mountains Geopark Association. From April previous year, we have an official status of UNESCO Global Geopark. So in my presentation, I give you a couple information about my geopark, but also I give you information about the general geopark in Poland, because in Poland we have two UNESCO Global Geopark. One of them is transboundary Polish Germany Muskau Arch UNESCO Global Geopark. And the second is, of course, the Holy Cross Mountains. But beside of these two geoparks, we have a lot of geopark initiatives in our country. So I give you short information about the situation of geotourism and geopark in Poland. But in my presentation, I focus on my geopark, Holy Cross Mountains UNESCO Global Geopark. So please change the slides if you can. Okay. Well, on this map you can see the situation in Europe. In the case of the Geopark, belong to the GGN and EGN. Global Geopark Network and European Geopark, including European Geopark Network. And as I said before, from April 21st this year, Holy Cross Mountains became an official status of UNESCO Global Geopark. We are situated here in central part of Poland, and in the boundary between Poland and Germany, we have, as I said before, we have a Muskau Arch. Next slide, please. Well, but of Geoturism initiative in Poland. And well, this Geopark movement, Geotourism movement in Poland, based on geodiversity. But the geodiversity in Poland is different in different part of our country. On the left, you can see simplified geological map without quaternary deposits. So we can observe Mesozoic and Paleozoic and older rocks and situation of this geological structure in Poland. So as you can see, we have a domination of geotourism, geopark initiative in the southern part of our country. And of course, this is directly connected with rich geodiversity, especially in southern part of Poland, because a lot of geopark initiatives situated, for example, in Lower Silesia and the Holy Cross Mountains, and general in southern part of our country. For example, in Lower Silesia, we have a few geopark initiatives. The land of the extinct volcano in Kachowskie Mountain, aspiring UNESCO Global Geopark, but the other, for example, Sudetys Foreland is also a very important initiative of a geopark from this part of our country. In the southern eastern part of Poland, we have also a few geopark initiatives in Dziura, in Peniny, in Roztocze. This is the eastern part of Poland, and of course the Holy Cross Mountains Geopark. Well, the situation is a little bit different in the northern part of Poland, where the geodiversity is not so, let's say, so complicated, so diverse, like in the southern part. So, from this point of view, from this reason, there is a relatively small areas initiative in the northern part of Poland, Geotourism Geopark initiative. But of course, in this part of our country, we have a few examples of geopark geotourism movement. Of course, Muskau Arch is one of the examples, but another interesting example is Moryń Geopark, situated in the northwestern part of Poland. Those geoparks is strongly connected with geological heritage, focus on Ice Age. Muskau Arch and Moryń Geopark have this kind of specific of geological heritage. So they directly focus on this topic. Okay, next slide, please. And here you have three examples of different geoparks from Poland. Two of them are the UNESCO Global Geopark, Muskau Arch. As I said before, this is transboundary Polish-German geopark. The most significant geological part of this geopark is post-industrial corporal heritage, but also glass-tectonical forms and different geological structures connected with the Ice Age. That's the fundamental part of geological heritage and cultural also heritage of this geopark. Holy Cross Mountains Geopark, situated in the central part of Poland. And well, the fundamental geological feature of this geopark is a rich geodiversity and occurrence of different sedimentary rock. rocks representing all geological periods from the Cambrian to the Quaternary. So the rich geodiversity is a fundamental geological feature of this area. And the land of the extinct volcanoes, aspiring UNESCO Global Geopark, situated in the southwestern part of Poland. This is a geopark strongly connected with magmatic and volcanic rocks. And of course, the main geological, geomorphological element of this area is remnants of ancient volcanoes prepared by weathering and erosion and visible in the landscape of this area. So we have three different examples of different geoparks which have a different geological, geomorphological characteristic. But all this geopark is focused on the idea of the geopark. And the idea of the geopark is holistic, of education in the field of not only geological sciences, but in the field cultural identity, in the field of the integration of local community and involvement of the local community in the work of the geopark. Okay, so next slide, please. Well, as I said before, I'm going to give you more detailed information about my geopark, the Holy Cross Mountains Geopark, which is famous in Poland, especially because they have a rich geodiversity. And a lot of geologists and students of geological sciences go to this area and learn geology and to use this unique geoheritage to prepare some field trip, to prepare some field work in geological sciences. So from more than 100 years, this region is very popular among the geologists in Poland. Next slide. Well, the idea of establishing geopark in my region, Holy Cross Mountains, in Polish version Świętokrzyskie, is bring from two ideas. The first was the idea of creation of the Chęciny Kielce Landscape Park in the 1991. And the author of this idea, our regional geologist and geographist Tymoteusz Wróblewski prepared the concept of landscape park, which we focus on not only geological heritage, but also on the landscape, cultural identity, and biodiversity. So it was a very important concept which bring us to idea of the holistic thinking about the protection and education in our region. So the result of this concept, of this idea, was creation of the Chęciny Kielce Landscape Park in December in 1996. The second idea, which was very important to the origin of the geopark in the Holy Cross Mountains, was the idea, the concept, the idea of the Geo-education center in Kielce. Kielce is the capital of Świętokrzyskie Voivodeship, and it's also is the biggest city, yes, in our voivodeship, and it's also situated in the Holy Cross Mountains Geopark territory. So this concept, it was the concept to create some institution in the city, and the idea of this institution was protection and conservation of former quarries situated in the Kielce city. So the result of this idea was creation the Geo-education Center in October 2003. So these two ideas brings together, give us a strong base to creation a geopark in our region. And finally, we create a Holy Cross Mountains geopark. Based on this idea, we create the Holy Cross Mountains UNESCO Global Geopark in 2017. And as I told you before, in 2021, we received an official status of UNESCO Global Geopark. Okay, the next slide, please. The important thing of each geopark is the management structure. And from this point of view, our geopark is have formal structure. It's the association of 5 local communes. We have 5 local communes. We have association of these communes, and of course we have an association of a legal personality. We have statutes. We have a management structure, and the responsibility of this association of the 5 communes is managed to whole geopark area. And this area is 526 square kilometers. So on the picture, you can see an official representatives of our geopark, the mayor of our communes. Next slide. Okay, geological heritage is basis for the creation of each geopark. And of course, the important thing is international value of this heritage. And from this point of view, the Świętokrzyskie region is very important on the geological map of Poland, because this is the region situated in the in Trans-European Suture zone, the central part of Poland. Another important thing in the geological framework of this region is occurrence of the sedimentary rock representing all geological periods from Cambrian to Quaternary. So from geological point of view, this region is very significant in the geological map of Poland and also the geological map of Europe. Next slide. On the left, you can see a general geological map of the Świętokrzyskie region. And this white line means the boundary of our geoparks. So you can see the Holy Cross Mountains Geopark is situated in the southwestern part of the Świętokrzyskie region, in the area of rich geodiversity. On the next slide, you will see, next slide, please. You will see a more detailed information about, more detailed view about the geological feature of this region. So we have a different sedimentary rocks, as I said before, represent different geological periods, but the most important part of geological heritage is the Devonian. Devonian sedimentary rocks contain a lot of fossils, and almost all of our important, significant, representative geosites are connected with Devonian profile. So this is I think, the most important part of our geological heritage. Another thing from the geomorphological point of view is relationships between geological structure and the morphology, so-called the structural morphology. We can observe this type of morphology in the south, especially in the southern and the central part of the geopark. The other things are the outcrops of interesting geological formations, but also tectonic forms. Like on this photo, you can see one of the example of the tectonic fault from Ślichowice Nature Reserve. Another part of our geological heritage is karst phenomena, the caves, but also different karst forms on the surface that represent a different periods from the geological history of our region. And also an important part of geological, but also industrial heritage of our geopark are the numerous remnants of historical mining and quarrying. Many of our geosites are connected with former quarry or with the place where ore, copper, for example, or lead ore were excavated. So we have many geosites connected with industrial heritage, with old mining. Next slide, please. Well, our logo, the logo of our geopark, have also strong inspirations from geology and geomorphology. So on this picture, you can see a geological cross-section through the Kęcińska Valley. This is the valley situated in the central part of our geopark. And from geological point of view, this place is an anticline. So we have in the logo, we have a motif of anticline, Kęcińska anticline. We have a motif of Kęcińska Valley, you can see here. And well, we have also an inspiration from cultural heritage, because one of the hill very close to this valley, Zamkowa Hill, was the place where medieval castle is situated. So in the logo, we have a combination of inspirations, geology, geomorphology, and cultural heritage of our geopark. So all these things we reflect in the logo of our geopark, you can see here. Okay, next slide, please. Well, a few examples of our representative geosites. As I said before, we have a lot of former quarry, especially connected with excavation of the Devonian rocks, limestone, dolomites. So almost all our representative geosites looks like this. This is the former quarry Kadzielnia, situated in Kielce, former quarry Szewce, former quarry of Cholosiowa and Ślichowice. And all these places are our important geosites. Besides of the former quarry, we have a lot of geosites connected with the caves. For example, one of the most beautiful cave in Poland, Paradise Cave, situated in the central part of our geopark. And Góra Miedzianka Hill Nature Reserve. This is another example of representative geosite from our geopark. And this is the hill with beautiful landscape very close, but beautiful view, but also a very important place connected with the history of the mining, connected with the copper ores. So also the interesting place for historical background, industrial background also. Okay, next slide. Besides of geology, historical mining and quarrying is an important part of our heritage. And here you can see a few examples of from this topic. Archive photos of former quarry where different sedimentary rocks were excavated, and this rock were used in the local architecture. So, well, we can show the place where this rock were excavated, but we can show the place where this rock were used. In many churches and local buildings, we have beautiful examples of using of this kind of material, geological material. But another thing, another example is the place connected with the mining of the ore, like copper ore in Miedzianka, but also lead ore, like in the Karczówka in Kielce, where we have a unique example of cultural heritage. I think about the sculpture of Santa Barbara, made of one pieces of galena, the lead door. So this is a unique example of connection between a geology and cultural heritage in the area of our geopark. Next slide. Well, the area of our geopark have a unique combination of geodiversity, but of course also rich biodiversity is also important on this area, and cultural heritage also. Well, in our geopark territory, we have over 78 geosites, 16 natural sites, and 48 cultural sites. The over 70% of this area have legal protection under the Polish law. And from this point of view, I show you next slide, where you will see a map of protection area and places in our geopark territory. So next slide, please. And on the left, you can see the map of the protection, legal protection in our geopark area. So according to Polish law, connected with the protection of the nature, we have an aerial form of protection, like, for example, landscape park, or the area of landscape value, for example. But we have also a form of protection connected with the places, single places. And this is, for example, the nature monument, the ecological site, the documentary site, and also, of course, the nature reserve. So all this form of protection of the nature, including inanimate nature, all this form we have on the geopark area. And the important thing in our activity is not only a protection by law, but also a conservation and using of this place for a sustainable way. For example, for geotourism, for education. So we have a lot of examples of using the place like this, like nature reserve or documentary sites, for these purposes. On the picture on the right, you can see a few examples of this management, yes, and using of this place. And I describe you and give you more information about two examples, because these examples have fundamental meaning for our geopark. So on the next slide, please, we have two examples of what we do with the nature reserve, what we use this place, and how we use this place for geotourism and geoeducation. And these two examples are connected with the two main centers in our geopark territory. The first one is the Geo-education center in Kielce, situated in the Wietrznia Nature Reserve, the place connected with exploitation of Devonian limestones. Nowadays this is the former quarry under the protection, as I said before, as a nature reserve. So in this nature reserve, the Geo-education center is situated, and this is the place where we have interpretation of our geodiversity, where we have the interpretation of our geological record from the territory of our geopark. But in this center, in the Geo-education center in Kielce, we focus on geological education of children and youths. But in the second place, in the European Center for Geological Education in Kęciny. It's also situated, this place is also situated very close to the former quarry and very close to the nature reserve, Rzepka Nature Reserve. So this place is connected with the didactic, geological didactic, but at the university level. So in our Geopark, we have the two main centers, one of them connection with the geological education of children and youths, and the second one connected with the didactic geological education of students of geology. Okay, next slide, please. Well, geological education, especially connected with the education of the children and youths, is especially visible in the Geo-education center in Kielce. On this example, this is an example of geological workshops from our Geo-education center, where children grinding and polishing local rocks, for example, limestone or calcite. So they learn about these rocks, but also they learn about the using of these rocks in the different purposes, in architecture, for example. So this is the example of the education activity where we give our visitors, especially children, information, general information about the geology, but also we give an information about cultural, industrial heritage of our geopark. So this is the one of the example of our activity that we have in the Geo-education center. Next slide. Well, here you have another examples of our activity. Different field games, some geological trips with guides, workshops for students, the workshops for children. We have many of activities, but we're using not only our geotourism infrastructure like Geo-education center, but we also use our representative geosites. And here you have a few examples of this kind of activity from the field trips, starting to the field games, for example. We also use the place like this. You can see on these two photos. One of them is a museal chamber of the history of the ore mining, and the second one is the center of the pottery traditions situated in the southern part of our geopark. So not only typically geological education, but also cultural education that is our activity that we have in our geopark territory. Next slide. Okay, beside of education, we put a huge pressure on the development of tourism activity in different ways. And here you have some examples of such kind of activity connected with different places, also with nature reserve on the typical geological sites, like in the cave. Different activity like cycling, canoeing, zip line, or walking or climbing. Yes, so we use our geological heritage to develop sustainable tourism in our territory, and it's also beside of geological education and cooperation with scientific institution. It is also a very important part of our activity of our geopark. Next slide. Okay, next. Well, a local community have fundamental meaning to develop a big geopark. And well, in our territory, we have a lot of local initiatives, a lot of local people who involved in prepare different activities connected with cultural heritage. So on the next slide, I give you some examples of cultural heritage, and example of our representative of our local community who were very involved in the Geopark or Geopark activity. So here we have examples of two people, Mrs. Elżbieta and Mr. Józef, who are carry about the pottery traditions in our Geopark, and who are the ambassadors of our Geopark also. We, as a Geopark, we cooperated with them, and we used their knowledge for education, children, youths, families, about the tradition, about our heritage. So this is one of the example of connection between geology and cultural heritage in our Geopark. Next slide. Next. Here is another example of ethno-kitchen. I say this word because this is Mrs. Elizabeth, who work in the ethnographic center in our Geopark, and we also cooperate with this person to promote a local foods in our Geopark, because a local food is also a strong part of our local identity, local cultural heritage. So we have also a good cooperation with people like this, like Mrs. Elizabeth, to promote our heritage, to promote our local foods from our Geopark territory. Next slide. Next. Local folk bands are also important part of our identity. And here you have two photos from our evaluation mission. You can see Mr. Mahito Watanabe, Chris Woodley Stewart from Mahito Watanabe from Japan, and Chris Woodley Stewart from England, who were our evaluators during the evaluation mission. And during the evaluation mission, they met our local community, and we show our local cultural heritage through the activity of our local people. So here you have a few examples of our local folk bands, or the reconstruction group, which is also very important for our cultural heritage. Okay, next slide. Next. Well, another important thing in each Geopark is networking. And here we have one of the example of our networking activity, but in the at the local level, because here we have an example of cooperation with local guides, tourist guides. We have a long-term initiative which called Geo Guides, and this initiative is focused on cooperation with the between Geoparks, our Geopark, and local guides. And this initiative is focused also on geological education and improve of quality of geological education among the local tourist guides. So we have a group of our guides. They are also some like ambassadors of our brand of our Geopark, but also they are a group of persons who cooperated with our Geoparks, and we are cooperated with them. And we organize a lot of field trips and special geological classrooms where these people is activity, yes, and participated in this classroom and learn about the geology, geomorphology of our region. Okay, so next slide, please. Well, this is the last slide with the example of networking, but at the international level. Well, we involved in several projects, international projects, focused on geotourism and education. And here you can have two examples from the project meeting, especially an Erasmus project meeting in the Papuk Geopark and in the Madonie UNESCO Global Geopark. Papuk from Croatia, Madonie from Sicily. So we have a good cooperation with this geopark, but also with the other geoparks in the field of exchange the ideas, exchange a good practice, exchange also an information about the geology, cultural heritage, etc. So another example, of course, is participating in the meeting or in the conference, like EGN, GGN conference, or EGN Spring meeting. You can see on this photo this huge group of people, the people connected with the European Geopark network. So that meeting is very important for us because cooperation, networking is a fundamental part of activity of the geopark. So in this field, we also have a lot of activities as a UNESCO Global Geopark as a part of the family of Global Geopark Network. Okay, so the last slide, and the last slide is the thank you for your attention. I hope this presentation was good for you and give you some interesting information about our geopark and our activity. So thank you very much for your attention. Thanks a lot.
We thank you for your presentation. I'll just ask if we have any questions. Okay, so nobody. So thank you so much. And
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Takže tohle byla poslední naše prezentace.
This was the final presentation. Once again, the last presentation. And now I'm handing over the floor to Mr. Gardon, who's going to moderate the Q&A section and possible further items you'd like to discuss about. Congratulations, you've survived today's marathon. Tomorrow's program might be more vivid, also due to the field excursion and the excursion to the schools. I'd like to ask you to do the following. There are labels like this bearing your names so that we can personally get in touch, and so that we do not have to say, hey, you over there and hey there. So that's the first organizational matter. And now, what's the time? 18:06. We ought to go for dinner at about 6:30. And we can order, let's say, the connection back at 20:30. It's up to you when you wanna leave. So nobody against. So we'll get to the hotel at 8:30, as the front benchers just told me. Now, as far as tomorrow's program is concerned, we'll split up in two groups for the excursion to the Geo schools. The first bus will be hung up downstairs, the list of the respective person, and the second group will be formed by the Spanish-speaking colleagues and the colleagues from the Ukraine, as there will be interpreting provided between these languages. The second group will be the English-speaking one. If you'd like to hear Russian, please just inform me so that I may assign you to the other group going at that particular time. Otherwise, the first group would have only the opportunity to listen to English. And furthermore, at 4 o'clock tomorrow, 4 p.m., we'll go to a site near Jince I'd rather recommend good, solid boots. We'll go about 300 meters. We'll hand out geological hammers. Those we've presented to you. And I guess that if you be careful, you'll definitely find something interesting, guided by Mr. Fatek, if I got the name right, and you could then take the fossil home as a souvenir. Pavla informed me that your travel back on September the 8th might be a bit complicated. There are four connections. First at 3:30 in the morning, and all the others ought to go at 18:15 and at about 19:10. There's been some requests that you'd like to head out earlier. That's okay, but if you want to leave earlier, let's say after, well, breakfast, we can agree upon that with the transport company, but individual transport would not be possible. So, if you agree during today's dinner that you'd like to head out for Prague at, let's say, 8:30, 9:30, whatever, you might do so, and then you can easily get to the airport. And in this case, you might take a walk around in Prague prior to leaving. We won't make this too public. Nevertheless, as I already told you, we have this opportunity to head out for Prague earlier. But if you want to do so, you have to agree upon that as a group. It's, so to say, an open question to be answered tomorrow. Are there now any questions, comments, or remark regarding the course of this conference? Anything you'd like to recommend? Now's the time. And if not, I'm ending this torture. And you can take a look around this house, the Natura house. We have quite interesting expositions. For example, those of the we have started also cooperation with institutions abroad according to the Nagoya Convention, and there is an exposition, as I told you, regarding the pinehawk moths and the protected landscape area of Brdy. The Brdy area has been a protected access area due to the fact that it has been a military training ground. And if you have any questions regarding this, Mr. Poyer from the Landscape Protection Agency is here, and Mr. Starka as well. They are experts into landscape protection in the Czech Republic. The ground floor hosts an exposition of snakes, and furthermore, the paleo artist Jan Sovak has some of his works placed in here. He sort of inspired Spielberg to shoot the very famous movie Jurassic Park, and we also present information regarding the Geopark, starting from the very old periods up to now. The individual paleontological findings are being reconstructed in there, and I'd like to meet with you at about 6:30. And the very fundamental issue is handing back the interpreting devices. Please do so, because we have to reload them prior to tomorrow's program. So give them back to the technician when going out of this room. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.